So, it's a Game Gear. I mean, obviously it's a Game Gear, but it's a bit more special than that because this is a broken Game Gear, and it's something that I overpaid for on eBay very recently. So, you know, whenever you're having to sort out a home and you think, you know what, I'm gonna clear out some of the useless broken stuff that I don't need anymore. Don't put it in the bin. Put it on eBay, because some idiot like me will come along and probably give you perfectly good money for it, and that's kind of what's happened here. So, I've been after a Game Gear for a while now, actually. I did do a video, goodness, it must have been 2 or 3 years ago now, when I refurbished one of these. But that wasn't mine, that belonged to my brother. But this one, well, this one's mine. So I've finally got one. Doesn't work, but I've got one. Yeah. Seller said they've put batteries in it and tried to power it on, and the power light will flash briefly and go off, and it doesn't do anything else. They also said it's got quite a lot of scratches on it as well. So what I've done is I've gone ahead and I've ordered a new crystal for the screen. But now that it's actually turned up, I don't think the scratches are that bad. I mean, I'm looking at the general condition of it, and it's not that bad. There are a few scuffs in it, but then, you know, it must be 30 plus years old, this thing, so that's to be expected, really. The condition of it, personally, I think is quite reasonable. The buttons feel like they've been well used. The D-pad feels a little bit sloppy, but again, that's to be expected. If we look on the other side, yeah, there's the odd little scuff that you may or may not see in the camera, and the big one is the battery covers are missing as well. Again, that's not a problem. You can get replacements for those quite cheaply, brand new. I've ordered a set, they're in the post. Anyway, yeah, battery covers are in the post, so as soon as they turn up, I'll fit those. Well, assuming I can get it to work, anyway. What else? Yeah, I think that's about all I've got. All I got was the main unit, nothing else. I did buy separately, just so I can test it, and it might be a good game, I don't know. I've got a copy of Alien 3 as well, so I think this is going to be a video where we try and get this thing up and running, and if we can't get it up and running, we can at least maybe identify what went wrong with it. But before we go any further, let's just verify that it is actually broken, because I haven't tested it yet. I mean, I think it's highly unlikely that the seller would lie and say something was broken when it wasn't, but yeah. Let's just give it a go and see what we get, shall we? So these are all freshly charged batteries. And, oh! Well, it's not quite what he said. I mean, they said the power light would come on and go off again. Well, the power light's steady on, and I've got a flickering on the screen. Turn that off. Turn it on again. Huh. I mean, that's not terrible. I mean, it's completely useless, don't get me wrong, but it's doing more than I actually expected it to. So let me just give the cartridge a bit of a... Just in case we've just got dirty contacts, you never know. Now I've just got a black screen. I wonder if it's just dirty contacts. I mean, it'll need capacitors anyway. These things are notorious for it, but... Okay, well, it's doing slightly more than the guy said. But it obviously isn't working. So, yeah. Okay. We've verified that it's stiffed, so let me take the batteries out. We'll take it apart. And at the very least, I'm going to swap out the capacitors. I mean, I would do that if it was even a working example, because they rot on these things anyway. So, yeah, I'll let me break out the tools, and I'll bring you back in a second. All right, let the dog see the rabbit, or so the saying goes. Let's get into it. I'm hoping all the screws are here, because that's always a good indication that nobody's been in here before us, because I hate that. So far, so good. And they're all breaking loose at that satisfying snap, which seems to indicate that they've been there for a long time. There's one there. Yep, there it goes. Lovely. And then there's one there, and that is a game bit type. So I need one of these. And that wasn't even tight. Okay. I'm sure it's fine. I think that's all the screws. Let's see if it comes apart. Oh, it does. Yes, it does. Lovely. Okay. So, yeah. Let me see if we can separate these two halves. What's up? Let me get me big glasses on wherever I've put those, and I'll just separate some of these connectors. I think they just pull out on the plugs, if I'm gentle. That's that one. And come on. Come on. Aha. And aha. Yes. Right. Okay, so they're separated. And that gives us, if it'll focus, that's the soundboard, which has probably got rotten capacitors on it. In fact, yes, I can see it from here, they're pretty rotten. Don't know if that's going to show up on the camera or not. If you can see. You see under that big one, it's a little bit gungy. Powerboard, they look okay, but I'll swap them out anyway. And then we've got to change all those capacitors there as well. Assuming I've got them. I probably have. If not, I can order them. Don't think there's any on that side. Clean the cartridge port up, and then maybe it'll come back to life. Maybe. I don't know. Let's not worry about this part of it yet. Let's do the surface mount stuff. Let's do the sound first, because that tends to be the worst. Let me just try and focus that camera a little bit better. Okay, so I think if I take this plate off, I hope you're remembering where everything goes here, because I'm going to be relying on you later to put this all back together. Get this shield out. Put the screws in the shield so I don't lose them. Right, let's get this board out. So there is a screw, nice shiny screw there. If it'll go, and it will. And there is a little crusty screw right down there. So you come. Go. Come on. There you go. That's a bit of a fairy one. Right, okay, that should lift out. And it does. Lovely. So let's work. Focus. Let's work on that first. Yeah. There's some bad soldering under there. I presume that was factory, but it's pretty crap. So we'll redo that as well. Let me go through my stash. Let me see if I've got those capacitors. I may have. I will get them desoldered. So, last time I did one of these, I was a little bit controversial in the way I removed them. And what I did is I cut the top off the capacitors with some sharp clippers, and then I just levered up the remains to leave the legs, and then desoldered the legs. Personally, I found that quite a safe method for removing these, but not everyone agrees. I'm probably going to do that again, if I'm honest. This isn't me telling you the best way to remove these surface mount capacitors. The way I'm doing it probably isn't the best way, and it probably isn't the recommended way. Hot air might well be better. In fact, do you know what? I didn't have a hot air station then. I do now. I could try that. I'm just a little bit concerned that if I use hot air, I'm going to disturb all these other surface mount components as well. I don't know. Let me have a think. I suppose I could use some Kapton tape just to keep the heat away from the other components. That might be safer. Might be better. Yeah. Anyway, these have got to come off regardless. Let me just see if I've got them first, because they're pretty rotten, I think. Alright, fine, I heard you all shouting, so I'm just going to use a little bit of hot air. Well, quite a bit of hot air. I'll take them off one at a time. I'll replace them one at a time. And I'll just use a little bit of Captain tape to keep the heat off the rest of the components, so it doesn't all start migrating around the board as everything comes loose. And I'll do this for all of them. Hopefully they'll just come off. I'm using sort of moderate airflow and about 300 degrees on the blower. Just see. Always a chance the solder won't melt because it's all been contaminated with electrolyte, but you never know. Anything yet? No. Come on. Oh god, I can smell it, you know. Alright, I need to get it a little bit closer, but so I'm going to move the camera, but you get the idea. Soundboard's done. Those caps were not budging with the heat gun, they just wouldn't move, so I ended up chopping them just not right at the base but just before the base, and then what you can do is you can just prise up the remains of the capacitor and then just desolder the legs, and that worked pretty well. They were a little bit difficult to shift because just the sheer amount of rot on the board from the leaked electrolyte, it has done quite a bit of damage. Thankfully all the tracers seem to check out okay, so I've cleaned the board up best I can. I've soldered in the new capacitors. The quality of the soldering is shocking even for my standards, but it was awkward. I mean, they say a bad workman never blames his tools, but the tip on my soldering iron was shocking. So, you know, make of that what you will. Anyway, eagle-eyed amongst you will notice that there's a capacitor here that isn't a surface mount capacitor where it should be. Well, I ran out. It's exactly the same size as a surface mount capacitor, and I folded the legs flat and soldered it down, but technically, it's the wrong part, although it is the right capacitance and it is the right voltage, so it'll work just fine. I wasn't going to put an order in for one capacitor and pay postage on it, so that's what I've done. It'll work just fine. Anyway, that board's done. That can go back in the machine. I'll pull the power board out and I'll change the capacitors in that. That should be a bit easier, they're all through hole. So the power board should be a little bit easier to recap. There's only 3 and they're all through hole, so I should be able to desolder these quite easily. And from what I can tell, they haven't leaked either, so we should be okay. Now, slight issue. This big cap here, that is 820 microfarad at 6.3 volts. And I have 820 microfarad at 6.3 volts. However, it is physically just ever so slightly marginally taller than the one that I'm pulling out. Now, I don't know what the clearance is like in the case, but I guess we're gonna find out, aren't we? I might have to just lean it over slightly just to make sure everything fits, but it'll probably be alright. Anyway, I'll swap these out. I'll bring you back when I'm done. Right, and a long time later, the power board's been recapped. It shouldn't take that long to do 3 capacitors. It's taken me over an hour. You wouldn't believe it. It was just murder trying to desolder those capacitors. Basically, there's a great big heatsink underneath, and it's not helped by the battery terminals as well, which are also acting as a heatsink, which made desoldering, even with a professional desoldering pump, very, very difficult. So I managed to get the capacitors out okay. Well, these 2 came out okay, but then getting the holes to clear from solder afterwards was awful. Absolutely awful. It took me forever. But they're in now and it's done. This one here, you'll notice, looks like it's a bit crooked. That's because I haven't put the capacitor through the holes. I've just soldered to the top of them. And the reason I've done that is because there's some board damage there. Now, when I pulled the original capacitor out, well, I didn't even have to pull hard. I just touched it and it just came right out, and it left the 2 electrodes just sort of sticking there. The thing had completely rotted. It had leaked everywhere, and it had damaged the tracks a little bit as well. So rather than trying to clear the holes to get the new capacitor in, I think the tracks would have just gone completely. It wasn't worth the risk. I've just rubbed it down a little bit just to expose a bit of the track, and I've soldered this capacitor directly to the top of those. It makes a good electrical connection, although it looks a bit weird. But trust me, it was the safest thing to do. So that can go back in. And then, right, we're onto the main board, I suppose. We'll start looking at that. I'll have to have a little stock take, see if I've got all the capacitors before I start the job, because I'm not convinced I have. But yeah, I'll bring you back once I've tidied up a little bit, because everything's a little bit everywhere at the moment, and we'll have a look at that main board. Right, it's been some time since I've had the chance to look at this. Yeah, I had to go back and re-watch the video just to remind myself where I actually got up to with this thing, because I had to stop for a bit. Life gets in the way, as life tends to. I had to go and do other things, but yeah, back on the Game Gear now. So yeah, for you it's probably 3 seconds. For me, it's been quite a while. Anyway, what did we do? I'm just trying to remind myself more than anything. We fixed the soundboard. We fixed the power board. The power board, if you remember, I had to put in a capacitor on a slight angle because of the board rot. Well, it turns out the board rot was more extensive than I thought, and that capacitor broke away as well because the trace it was attached to was actually very weak. So I've actually got bypassed the trace altogether, and I've had to solder the capacitor directly onto the component it was connecting to. But that's fine. Electrically speaking, it shouldn't make any difference. So hopefully that's okay now. Well, let me just pop you out the stand a second. Okay, so I did go through, just when I had some time, I just went through, I didn't film it, I'm sorry, but I've changed all the electrolytic capacitors on the main board as well, so hopefully that'll be enough to get it going. Well, I guess we'll find out. Some of them looked okay, some of them you could physically see they've been leaking, and when you desoldered them you got that horrible fish smell. So yeah, some of them had just let go. I cleaned the board up with some IPA, so that should stop any further rot, but I can't see any other damage. I did test all the pads with a multimeter, and they all seem to be still making a connection, so hopefully we've got away with it. So we should be good to go with this thing. So yeah, we can put some batteries in it and give it a test. But I thought what we might do first is we might go over and we'll just have a little look at some of the capacitors that I actually brought off the board, and we'll test them. Is that going to focus? Of course it isn't. And we'll just see what sort of condition they were actually in. See how many are good, how many are dead. My guess is they're all going to be dead, but who knows. Let's do that. Right then, let's see what we get with these capacitors, if the test is capacitors at all. Right, that should be 100 microfarad, but the case just cracked away as soon as I tried to take it off the board, and it's a little bit dented, so I'm going to say this is probably going to do nothing at all, but we'll see. Let me just hook it up. God, my eyesight's terrible. Part of the reason I had to stop working on this is I did pick up an eye injury quite recently, and I couldn't do much of anything, but that should have healed now. Just bad eyesight. Anyway, should be 100 microfarads, and let's see what we get. I mean, ESR's a little high, but that's actually not terrible. That's not terrible. Alright, let's try another one. Right, that should be 10 microfarads. Let's see what we get. So 10 microfarads, and it's nope, unknown or damaged part. So that one's dead. Next one, that should be 33 microfarads. Let's see what we get. No unknown or damaged part again, so that one's dead. Yeah, seeing a pattern here. That one should be 0.47. I think this is one of the ones that helps drive the backlight, I think. Okay. No. I mean, it's working, but no. Nope. Well out of spec. Well, let's do one more. Let's do one more. And 68 microfarads, odd size, but that's what it is. Oh, good grief, no. 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 Should be 68 microfarads. Okay, that's miles out as well. So you get the idea. The capacitors are junk, basically. So they either don't register as a capacitor at all, or they're miles out of spec, with the exception of that 100 microfarad, which wasn't too bad. Yeah. It was worth taking the time to pull those off the board, most definitely. Anywho, the new screen and battery covers that I ordered have arrived. So the screen, I don't think I'm going to bother with, because I don't think the one on it is that bad, and it's worth pulling it apart for, so I'll just keep it as a spare. I think a bit of a rub with a bit of T-cut or something on the original will be enough just to bring the scratches out of it. I'm not too worried about that. What I was interested in was the battery covers, and they've turned up. And amazing, really. They've actually managed to send me 2 completely broken ones. So the tabs have broken off completely on both of them because they were packaged really quite badly. So well done there. So they were the eBay ones. I then went to AliExpress and I got a couple more. And these were not including postage, although I bought a few other things at the same time, so postage is kind of irrelevant. These were 96p. And I've got 2 complete battery covers without any breaks. So there you go. Should have just done that in the first place. But what I did do is, while I was on AliExpress, I thought, well, what else have they got for the Game Gear? And the screen mods, and if the console works and if the screen's a bit iffy, then maybe that's something I can do in a later video. I'm not going to get into it in this one, but again, these were pence. These were really cheap, but they are new rubber buttons for the D-pad and the action buttons. I bought them because they feel a little bit sloppy on this console, but if it works, we'll just see how well they function before I decide if I'm going to change these out or not. I might not bother, but I bought them just in case I needed them, and then I've got them. But the most interesting thing I bought, and had I known these were available and they were so cheap, I wouldn't have done half the work on this Game Gear, because there is a soundboard, there is a power board, and I can't remember which was which, but one was £5 and one was £6. And that's all they were, and that's for brand new replacement drop-in parts. It's almost just not worth changing the capacitors and dealing with the board rot for that sort of price. But I saw I thought I'll pick them up just in case there are problems with the board that I haven't spotted, because there was a bit of rot, particularly on that power board. And if it's going to give me grief, then I'll have a spare. And for the price of it, well, I'll just keep the spare in my stash if I don't need it, because it might come in for another project in the future. So I've bought them and I've got them, but I don't know if I'm going to need them or not. Had I known they were available that cheaply, I wouldn't have bothered repairing the originals, but you know, there it is. I've got them. I'll put them away. So, where does that leave us? Right, I suppose we just give this a test. Let me just see if that'll focus. I say we put it together. We put batteries in it and see if it lives, because all the caps have been changed. The board rot has been cleaned up as best I can. Everything checks out on a multimeter. I mean, what's the worst that can happen? I suppose it doesn't work, does it? So let's just see if we can close it up. Let's do it that way, so I can put this little cord back in. Should sit in there, I think. And hopefully everything will it'll line up again still, because I haven't like put a too large a capacitor in the wrong place and the case doesn't close, you know. Be a very me thing to do, wouldn't it? Yeah, everything seems to. Let me just get some. Let me just put a couple of screws in just to hold it in place. That'll do. Okay, right, we need batteries. I'm using rechargeables, they should be freshly charged. So we should be okay. And you know, just for novelty, let's put the battery covers on. Hey, and the battery covers go in, but the colour match is terrible. That's okay, it's on the back, who cares? Right, what do you reckon? Oh, do you know, put the game in, it might help. Oh, got a logo. Oh yes. We're working. Where's my sound? Is there a sound? Yeah, there it is. Oh, Alien 3's working. The screen doesn't look brilliant. It looks a bit dull, if anything, but maybe that's just the way they are. I don't know. I don't know what's coming through on the camera. And get the contrast adjustment right. I don't know how good this game is. I hope it's good because it's literally the only one I've got. Ew. Oh. Well, it's working. I don't know how well that's coming through on the camera. I'm trying to get the angle right. Why did that just reset itself? Ooh, yeah. I think the contacts might be a little bit dirty. Or it might be because I've not got all the screws in the case yet. Yep, no, doesn't like that. Let me see. Might just be. Yeah, I think I've just got dirty contacts. I'll clean them. And screw the case down properly as well, because that's probably not helping matters. Seems to work. Let's try and have a game at least. Now, I remember the screens on these not being great. Let me just zoom in a little bit. But I thought they were slightly better than this. Or maybe I've just got the contrast up at the wrong value, wrong setting, I don't know. It looks slightly better when you're playing it than it does on the camera. It looks really washed out on the camera. It's actually not that bad on the console. I think these just had a bit of a naff. I don't know what I'm supposed to do. Probably not that. Yeah. Why is there two of them? I thought in Alien 3 there was only the one. But I don't know. Anyway, it looks okay on the screen. The camera is washing it out a little bit. That'll be a setting on the camera, but it looks reasonably good on the screen. Oh, let's turn it off. It seems to be working. So I'll call that a success. Maybe in another video I'll do a screen mod for it. I don't know. I don't know. I'll have a think about it, but yeah, it's nice to get something done, something working. So I'll call this video here, and I'll say as always, thank you very much for watching. It's been a pleasure talking to you. See you on the next one, wherever that might be.